I learned something living in a rich neighborhood. People don't judge you by your heart. They judge you by your driveway, your roof, and the price tag on your life. So when the richest man in our HOA pointed at my little cheap house and laughed loud, enough for the whole community to hear, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stood there and watched him enjoy the moment. He cracked jokes about my paint. He joked about the size of my place. He even joked about me. His friends laughed with him, and the HOA board smiled like they were watching a comedy show. But while everybody thought I was embarrassed, I wasn't. I was calculating. He made the same mistake every arrogant millionaire makes. He thought the house I lived in was the only thing I owned. He thought he understood my value because he saw the outside of my walls. He didn't know I was quietly building something else. Not a new house. Not a new car. Not revenge. I was buying the very thing he used to control everyone in this. It's the neighborhood, the HOA. And when the day finally came, the day he tried to kick me out, the day he smirked at me like he already won, I walked into that meeting holding the papers that ended his entire reign. He used his money to bully people. I used his own rules to destroy him. He laughed at my home. So I took control of his kingdom. I moved into that neighborhood for one reason: peace. Not luxury, not status, not to impress anybody. Just peace. The kind of peace you work your whole life for. The kind of peace money can't buy, but a good neighborhood can give you. The houses around me looked like something out of a magazine. Perfect lawns, perfect driveways, perfect people pretending their lives were perfect too. And then there was my place. Smaller, simpler, a little older, but it was mine, paid for with every overtime shift I ever worked. I didn't care if it wasn't shiny. I cared that it was home. But in this neighborhood, people didn't see a home. They saw a price tag. They didn't see the man who earned it. They saw the number attached to the roof, and nobody judged harder than the millionaire across the street. To him, I was a stain on his luxury view. He treated the HOA like his personal kingdom, and every homeowner like one of his subjects. If he didn't like something, the board didn't like it either. If he wanted a rule changed, it changed before anyone could blink. People feared him, or wanted something from him, so they stayed silent. I stayed silent too, but not for the same reasons. I wasn't scared of him. I just didn't waste energy on people who think money makes them important. Still, it didn't take long to realize one thing. The moment I moved in, that man made me his new hobby. Little comments, little stares, little warnings from the HOA slipped under my door. At first, I brushed it off. Every community has one guy who thinks he runs the world, but this man wasn't just loud. He was powerful. And people in power always want one thing: control. And he decided he was going to control me. I remember the first day I met that man. I had just moved into the neighborhood, minding my business, unloading a couple boxes from my truck. The sun was out, birds were loud, everything felt peaceful, until his fancy black SUV rolled up like he owned the entire state. He stepped out wearing that smug little millionaire smile. The kind people get when they think God personally signed their bank account. He looked me up and down slow, like he was scanning a barcode that didn't belong in his store. Then he laughed. Not a friendly laugh that's disrespectful. Chest-heavy laugh rich folks use when they think you beneath them. He said, "This your house?" Cute. Real cute. Must be a starter home or something. The man actually chuckled harder, pointing at my porch like it was a joke. This was the first hour of me being there, and he already decided I didn't fit the HOA picture in his head. I stayed calm. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of snapping back. I just said, "Yeah, this is my place. And I like it," he smirked and said, "Well, don't get too comfortable. Our HOA is pretty strict. People like me make sure standards stay." Hi, people like me. That line went straight to my spine. Whole time he's talking, he's walking circles around my yard, nitpicking everything. A tiny crack in the driveway. A small patch of grass still settling. My old pickup truck like it offended him personally. He kept shaking his head like I was ruining his neighborhood. Then he dropped the final insult, you know? Some of us worked really hard to keep this community exclusive. But every neighborhood needs a little diversity, I guess. I knew exactly what he meant. The tone, the smirk, the arrogance dripping off every word. He wanted me to feel small, but inside I was already planning to make him choke on that pride someday. I smiled and said, "No worries. I blend in just fine." That's when he said, "We'll see." Once the HOA notices your place, he walked away laughing, tapping something on his phone, probably sending the first complaint before I even finished unpacking. That day, standing in my own driveway, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to fight him in the street. I was going to hit him somewhere it actually hurts people like him. Power, respect, and ownership. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I barely finished my coffee when an email from the HOA landed in my inbox. And guess who filed the complaint? That same millionaire with the shiny SUV and the discount personality. The email said my grass was uneven, my truck was a visual disturbance, and my trash bins were visible from the street, mind you. I had been living there for exactly 20 hours. 20. I sat there staring at the screen like, oh, this man really woke up and chose petty for breakfast. I ignored the first complaint. 3 hours later, another one came in. Then another. Then another. By day 3, I had 9 separate HOA warnings, all tied to him. I knew because he loved to see himself in the emails. Like he needed credit for being the neighborhood menace. He'd walk past my house slow every morning. Sunglasses on, chest puffed out, pretending to inspect the area. But he always made sure I saw him typing on his phone like he was drafting a legal bill. I'd be watering my lawn and he'd say, "Some of us actually care about property values. You might want to step it up," and walk off, smirking like he had dropped wisdom from the mountaintop. One afternoon, I came home from work and found a bright orange violation notice slapped on my door. This one wasn't about grass or trash. This one said I had an unapproved vehicle in my driveway. My truck. My paid-off. It's a perfectly legal registered truck. I knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't want me there. He didn't want somebody who wasn't impressed by his money or his status. He wanted me uncomfortable enough to move out. I could have snapped. I could have yelled. I could have dragged him all over that clean sidewalk. But I didn't. Because somewhere between the 5th email and the orange notice, I realized something. He wasn't just a neighbor. He was the HOA president. He had power. Not real power, but enough to make noise. And if he wanted to play that game, I could play too. The difference was, I don't make moves out of anger. I make moves out of strategy, and strategy always wins. So instead of reacting, I started paying attention. Watching him, listening, tracking how he talked to other neighbors, how he flexed his authority, how he treated people who didn't worship his title. It didn't take long to figure out something important. Everybody hated him. They just didn't have the courage or a plan to do something about it. But me, I had both. And he had just handed me the perfect reason to start my plan of taking everything from him. Starting with the HOA he thought he owned. The thing about people like him, they get drunk off power so long. They forget somebody out there might be smarter than them. I started digging, nothing crazy, just quiet observation at first. The kind where you don't say much, but you see everything. One night, while taking out my trash, I overheard 2 neighbors whispering near the sidewalk. They didn't see me, but I heard every word. They were complaining about how the HOA president had raised the monthly fees. Again, complaining about how he approved upgrades to his own property using HOA funds. Complaining about how he shut down anyone who questioned him during meetings. And then one of them said the magic words. He thinks he's untouchable because nobody reads the bylaws. Now that hit me like a notification from God because I read everything. Contracts, rules, fine print. I don't sign anything blind, so I went home. Pulled out the HOA binder they gave me when I moved in and started reading and reading. And reading 2 hours in, I found it, the crack in his armor. A single line buried near the end. Written in boring lawyer language, but powerful enough to change the entire neighborhood. If 67% of homeowners petition for a vote, the sitting HOA board may be dissolved and replaced. You must have assumed nobody would ever bother reading it. He must have assumed everyone was too scared, too lazy, or too tired to stand up to him. But I wasn't everyone. That line right there, that was my checkmate piece. I walked outside the next morning with a different kind of energy. Not angry, not annoyed. Focused, he was across the street polishing his already clean SUV like it owed him royalties. He looked up at me with that little smirk he loved to wear. "Morning," he said like he was the king blessing a peasant. I smiled back. Not a friendly smile, the kind of smile that says, "You have no idea how close your downfall is." Then I got to work. I started talking to neighbors. Calm, friendly, no pressure. I just listened to their stories. How he fined a single mom for her kids' bikes being slightly visible. How he threatened to sue a retired veteran over a garden flag. How he blocked someone from repainting their own porch because he didn't like the shade. Every house I walked to added more fuel to the fire he didn't know was burning under his feet. And the best part? Almost every single person I talked to said the same thing. If there's a way to get rid of him, I'm in. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a petty neighbor fight anymore. This was a neighborhood uprising, and I was about to lead it. At this point, I wasn't just collecting complaints. I was collecting ammo. The neighborhood had been quiet for months. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet where everybody's scared to even breathe wrong because the HOA President might slap them with a fine for disturbing the aesthetic. People were tired. People were fed up. People were waiting for someone to finally snap the chain, and that someone turned out to be me. I started small, one house at a time, knocking politely, keeping my voice calm, respectful. Because see, you don't start a revolution by yelling. You start it by listening, and the more I listened, the angrier people got, not at me. But at him, an older woman almost cried, telling me how he harassed her over a non-approved flower color. Another guy showed me actual screenshots of him threatening to tow his car for parking 1 inch over the line. A couple told me he denied their fence request 4 times while approving his own backyard renovation. That cost the HOA thousands. Every story was worse than the last. But then came the moment that sealed it for me. I talked to a single mom at the end of the end. Street, she worked 2 jobs, barely home, barely sleeping. She told me he'd fined her for grass length irregularity because she missed 1 lawn day. The fine? $200, she said, if you can get rid of him. I'll sign whatever you need. And that right there? That wasn't just frustration. That was unity. That was motivation. That was power shifting. So I printed out the petition. Simple, clean, legal. Just a single page that said, "Sign below if you support dissolving the current HOA board." I walked the neighborhood at sunset, not sneaky, not shady, just confident. People signed like they'd been waiting their whole lives for it. In 2 hours, I had more signatures than I expected. In 4 hours, I had enough to meet the requirement. By the next morning, I didn't just hit 67%, I hit 81%. Let that sink in. 8 out of 10 people were willing to throw the entire board into the trash just to get rid of him. When I looked at that stack of signatures sitting on my kitchen table, it felt like holding dynamite. Quiet, but ready to blow the whole system open. Now all that was left? Delivering it. Not by email. Not by mail. Not by some weak announcement. I was going to hand it to him face to face. The man who mocked my cheap house. The man who thought he owned the whole neighborhood was about to learn he didn't even own his own power, and that's when things got fun. I walked across the street like I had all the time in the world. Petition folder in my hand. Sun hitting his mansion just right, the kind of mansion built by money, not morals. He was standing outside, admiring his luxury SUV like it was a trophy he earned, not bought. He noticed me walking over and smirked before I even opened my mouth. Well, the neighborhood charity case finally wants something. His voice had that rich man arrogance, like he thought every breath he took was worth more than my whole life. I didn't bite. I didn't flinch. I just held out the folder. "You might want to read this," I said. He chuckled, slow and loud, like he couldn't imagine anything on earth that could ruin his day. But then, He opened it, and the smile melted right off his face. His eyes moved fast, scanning the signatures, flipping through page after page like he was hoping the names would magically disappear. He looked up at me, jaw tight. "What the hell is this supposed to be?" "It's a petition," I said. 81% of homeowners signed it. It's more than enough to dissolve the board and schedule a mandatory recall election. He laughed again, but this time it wasn't confidence. It was panic wearing a thin mask. "You think you can remove me?" he barked. "I built this HOA." "No," I said. "You bullied it." Big difference. His face went red, the kind of red rich men get when they realize their money can't fix something. "That's illegal. You can't do this. You don't know the bylaws." "I know them better than you," I cut in. "I've read every line. And according to Article 14, Section B, the residents have more authority than the board." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because he knew I was right. For the first time since I'd moved into that neighborhood, he looked small. "You won't win," he muttered. "Oh," I said calmly, "I already did." He tried one last jab, desperate. "This neighborhood was fine until you showed up." "You and your cheap house?" I stepped closer, calm, steady, unbothered. "That cheap house? It's about to own your entire HOA?" His eyes widened. And that's when he realized something he'd never understood before. I wasn't a pushover. I wasn't scared of him. And I wasn't alone. The whole neighborhood was standing behind me, and he didn't have a single ally left. I turned to leave, but stopped. "Oh, and one more thing," I said. "Pack light." He swallowed hard. "What?" "Power doesn't last long when everybody stops pretending you deserve it." And I walked away slow, controlled, letting him feel every second of that humiliation. Because the real hit? That was coming next. The next 48 hours felt like the neighborhood finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. Word spread faster than gossip at a backyard barbecue. People weren't whispering anymore. They were talking openly, boldly, like they had just remembered they were homeowners, not hostages. Everywhere I walked, neighbors nodded at me, not like a hero, more like a man doing what everyone else was too scared to start. The millionaire. He tried damage control. He sent out a community-wide email blaming misinformation. He claimed that malicious individuals were trying to destabilize the HOA. He even called an emergency board meeting to address the situation. But that meeting, that was his funeral. The board sat at the long conference table inside the clubhouse, polished wood, overpriced art on the wall, and a fake sense of authority they all loved to hide behind. But the room didn't feel powerful anymore. It felt nervous. Every chair in the audience was full. People were standing in the back. Some were recording. I walked in last, slow and deliberate, not because I wanted attention, but because I wanted him to know I wasn't showing up to negotiate. I was showing up to end him. The millionaire sat at the head of the table, stiff, pretending he wasn't drowning in fear. He didn't even look at me. He cleared his throat, tried to speak, but the room wasn't having it. People interrupted him. People challenged him. People he thought he controlled finally stood up and gave him the reality check he deserved. A woman raised her hand. "I want to know why you fined my daughter for chalk drawings on our sidewalk." "She's 8. A man shouted, "Why did you approve your own patio expansion, but deny everyone else's 4? Architectural inconsistency?" Another voice echoed, "Why are HOA funds being used for things nobody voted on?" Question after question hit him like punches. He stuttered. He blamed the board. He blamed procedure. He blamed anything except the person actually responsible himself. Then the HOA attorney walked in, the one I contacted. She placed the petition on the center of the table and said one sentence that cracked. The room opened. Based on the signatures, the current HOA board is officially dissolved. Gasps. Whispers. A few claps. The millionaire's eyes went wide like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. "You can't do this." He screamed, "I am the HOA. I make the rules." "No," the attorney said, calm as ice. "You enforce them. And you abuse that power? That ends today." and then she delivered the final blow. You are hereby removed from all HOA duties effective immediately. You no longer hold any authority in this community. The room erupted. Cheers. Relief. Some people literally crying from stress, finally leaving their bodies. The millionaire stood there trembling, sweating, looking like a king, who just realized the throne was borrowed and the kingdom was never his. He pointed at me with a shaking finger. You did this. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once. No, I said softly. We did this. Because revenge is never a solo mission. Revenge is a spark, and when a community is ready, one spark becomes a wildfire. And his empire? Already burning, losing the HOA board should have humbled him. Should have made him step back, rethink his life, maybe even apologize. But men like him don't learn from consequences. They panic. They lash out. They break themselves trying to break somebody else. And that's exactly what he did. That same night, around 11 p.m., I heard a loud bang outside my house. Not normal neighborhood noise. Not a car door. Not fireworks. A deliberate bang. When I stepped out onto my porch, he was standing in my yard, pacing, breathing like a bull about to charge. His hair was a mess, his face red. His shirt half untucked like he'd been drinking or losing his mind. Maybe both. He pointed at me the second he saw me. You think this is over? He shouted. You think you can embarrass me in front of my board? My neighbors? His neighbors. He still talked like he owned them. I kept my voice calm. Go home, you're not in power anymore. Nobody owes you fear, but rich ego doesn't listen to reason. It listens to pride, and his pride was in flames. He stormed up to my lawn, stepping closer and closer, yelling things that didn't even make sense anymore. He was spiraling, mixing threats with insults, calling me every name he could think of. You ruined everything. This community worked because of me. People respected me. You're nothing? Just some nobody who bought the cheapest house here. I cut him off. Funny how you keep talking about money, I said. You ever talk about character? That hit him harder than the petition. He got in my face, close enough to smell the alcohol. Close enough to prove he wasn't thinking straight. He jabbed his finger at my chest. You better fix this, he slurred. Get that board reinstated. Withdraw that petition. Tell everyone you lied. I'm not fixing anything, I said. I exposed you. That's it. And that's when he snapped. He shoved me. Not hard enough to hurt me. Just hard enough to show the world he wasn't the calm, composed millionaire he pretended to be. Hard enough to give me exactly what I needed. Because the second he put his hands on me, 3 porch lights flicked on across the street. 2 neighbors stepped outside. 1 woman started recording on her phone. He didn't even notice. He was too busy yelling, pacing, pointing, losing every shred of dignity he had left. You'll regret this. I'll sue you. I'll buy the whole damn neighborhood if I have to. I folded my arms, kept my tone cold and steady. You already lost the neighborhood, I said. Now you're losing yourself. He froze. For the first time, he realized people were watching, recording, whispering. The same people he controlled for years. Now watching him melt down like a child, losing his favorite toy. He backed away slowly, shaking his head. This isn't over, he muttered. But he knew it was. Everyone did. Because he didn't just lose power. He didn't just lose respect. He publicly lost control on camera. And footage like that destroys men who think image is everything. The next move wasn't mine. It was destiny aligning itself. Because the real downfall was about to hit him where he felt it the most. His reputation, his money, his empire, everything. The next morning I woke up to the sound of notifications blowing my phone up. Not 1 or 2, not 10, dozens. At first, I thought it was just neighbors checking in after last night's scene. But when I opened the first message, my eyes locked on the words. They posted the video. Yeah, the video, the one where the millionaire Mr. Big Money, Mr. HOA King, Mr. My house is worth more than your existence shoved me, screamed like a spoiled child, and publicly combusted in front of half the neighborhood. A neighbor had uploaded it to a local community Facebook group. From there, it spread like wildfire. Within hours, the video moved from Facebook to Nextdoor, from Nextdoor to Reddit, from Reddit to TikTok. People captioned it with things like, "Rich HOA president loses his mind when his power gets taken away." One HOA, guy to rule them all. Until he met the wrong neighbor? Karma in HD. Millionaire Meltdown Edition. And the comments. Brutal. Man's ego is bigger than his mortgage. Bro ran an HOA like it was a dictatorship. This is exactly why nobody likes homeowners associations. He pushed him. Oh, he's done. By noon, the video wasn't just trending in the community. It was circulating all over the city. By evening, his company's Yelp page started getting reviews mentioning the video. People calling him unstable, unprofessional, a danger to the community. By the next morning, the meltdown reached exactly the one place he never wanted it to reach. His business partners, a neighbor showed me a post. Someone on LinkedIn had shared the clip with the caption, "Leadership matters." This is what abuse of authority looks like. Corporate poison, the kind that stains permanently. Then came the final hit. A local news reporter reached out. They sent him a message requesting a comment about the HOA president. Filmed in a confrontation with a resident. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Because while his reputation was drowning online, something much worse arrived in his mailbox. A letter. Not from me. Not from the HOA attorney. But from the State Real Estate Licensing Board. A lot of people had reported him for ethical misconduct, intimidation, and abuse of position within a regulated housing environment. This was no longer HOA drama. This was legal scrutiny. And everything he'd done over the years, every shady fine, every unauthorized expense, every manipulated vote was coming into the light whether he wanted it or not. He showed up outside 2 days later, alone, tired, eyes bloodshot, like he hadn't slept. He didn't yell this time. He didn't shove. He didn't even stand tall. He just looked at me with the desperation of a man who suddenly realized he wasn't untouchable. "You ruined my life," he whispered. But the truth, he ruined it himself. I just made sure the world finally saw it. I didn't say anything back, didn't gloat, didn't taunt. Because when a man falls from a throne he built on fear, the fall itself is punishment. And his fall was only beginning. This was the moment everything flipped. The moment my patience officially expired. Up until now, I was playing quiet, moving smart, letting them think they were winning. But then they did something so bold, so reckless. It felt like they were begging for destruction. I woke up one morning, stepped outside with my coffee, and froze. There was a bright orange violation sticker slapped dead center on my front door. Not the mailbox. Not the porch. My door. And written across it in big black letters was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen from any HOA in my life. Final notice: home may be subject to HOA removal and property seizure. Property seizure. These clowns actually thought they had the authority to remove me. I swear for a second, I couldn't decide if I should laugh or flip the entire board upside down. And as I took that sticker off, I realized the neighbors were peeking from their windows, watching like it was the neighborhood Olympics. But that wasn't even the worst part. Right under the threat was a little handwritten note that said, "If you can't afford the fees, maybe this neighborhood isn't for you." That line right there, that was the gasoline on the fire, because that told me everything. They weren't enforcing rules. They were trying to push me out, trying to make me an example, trying to show the neighborhood that the HOA ran things, not the homeowners. They wanted a war. Then a war is what they were about to get. I took that sticker inside, laid it on the table, and started connecting everything like a detective from one of those crime shows. The fake violation fees, the bogus fines, the shady meetings, the manipulation, and now the threat. They'd escalated, which meant I could escalate too, but legally, surgically, and with enough force to collapse their whole little empire. And for the first time, I felt excited because they finally crossed the line that gave me the green light to unleash everything. I'd been building behind the scenes, and trust me, once I move, I don't stop. This was the point where the HOA made their final mistake. And now, I was done playing defense. It was time to strike. By the time the sun came up the next morning, his entire empire had already crumbled. The same man who once laughed at my little house was now the one drowning in letters, fines, warnings, and certified envelopes with my signature stamped across every single one of them. I walked up to his door one last time, calm, steady. Not a single ounce of anger left in me. When he opened the door, his eyes were hollow, like he finally understood who he'd been messing with. I handed him the final notice. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't bark threats. I didn't flex. I just said, this is it. Pay everything, or pack your bags. Your choice. He looked at the paper, then back at me. And for the first time since he moved into this neighborhood, the millionaire didn't have a single smart comment left. His mouth twitched, like he wanted to bark back, but the fight was gone. The man who used to talk big, walk big, and laugh the loudest couldn't even hold eye contact. He knew he lost. 2 days later, a moving truck pulled into his driveway. He kept his head down the whole time, shuffling around like a ghost. No designer suit, no fake confidence, no loud voice, just silence and defeat. Neighbors peeked out from windows, watching the same man who tried to bully the whole community slip away without saying a single goodbye. When the truck pulled out, I stood on the sidewalk, hands in my pockets, watching him disappear down the street. No cheering, no celebration, no clapback, just a quiet smile. Because revenge isn't loud. Revenge isn't messy. Revenge doesn't need an audience. Revenge is ownership. And in the end, I didn't just win the fight. I owned the whole damn HOA he thought he could control.